Hi everyone, Ryan here from Fight Game Analysis, and today we're going to be taking a look back at the fight that just wrapped up between Devin Haney and George Kambosos. But before we jump into that, if you've been enjoying the content, please go ahead and click on the like button and also subscribe to the channel. Really appreciate your support. Alright, so just last night we saw the big fight wrap up between Devin Haney and George Kambosos. Man, what a performance by Devin Haney, right? Like, what a performance. A lot of people have been seeing the talent that this guy's had for a long time. But last night it was on the biggest stage possible. Undisputed at 135 pounds. Goes over to Australia in front of like 40,000 fans. In front of the man who beat the man who beat the man. And takes the belt from him. And does so, I'll be perfectly honest, does so in dominant fashion relatively easily. I said in the lead up to this fight that it was all going to be about the jab. And that's exactly what we saw. Devin Haney came out there and delivered in dominating fashion. Completely controlled the action with that jab from start to finish. Completely. I mean, I saw in the post-fight, they were talking, I don't know if it was in a locker room, I don't know if it was outside the ring or wherever, but there was a clip that came out in the post-fight, and it was probably in the locker room, but Devin Haney came and he was like, hey, what surprised you? What did I have that you didn't quite expect? And Kambosos said you had a really good jab. Now, that's an interesting comment, because on the one hand, obviously, Kambosos and his team had to know the type of jab that Devin Haney has. They had to know that that was going to be a primary weapon. You look back at the film, you can see how he dominates so many opponents with it. It's not a secret going into this fight that Devin Haney had a great jab. I talked about it in the analysis and prediction that was actually the entire thing that the fight was going to hinge on. It was all going to be dependent on Devin Haney's jab. His offense, what he did with it, controlling the distance, that was all going to be on his aspect. From George Kambosos' side, it was all going to be about how he was going to nullify or not nullify Devin Haney's jab. It was all that was going to be the story of the fight. That's exactly what we saw. So in the post-fight, when he says, you had a better jab than I thought, that says a lot. That says that you had a man in George Kambosos who had the belts. He's the champ. He beat Teofimo Lopez. Did very well in a lot of fights before that, right? A fighter at the highest level for all intents and purposes. His team, the guys who took him to the highest level. Everybody knows, breaking down film on Devin Haney, that this is all going to be about the jab. And he still couldn't stop it. Everybody knew, I'm all the way over here in Chicago. I'm telling you, it's all going to be about the jab. Everybody knows. Devin Haney was still out there, able to go out there and completely dominate the fight with the jab. That's how good it is, man. That's how slick he is with that jab. That's how good he is with that jab. It's going to be a problem for everybody he faces for the rest of his career. Everybody he faces, that's going to be first and foremost what they have to contend with. You can't get by that jab, you can't win. You can't take that jab away from him, you can't win. Now look, can jabs be taken away? Absolutely. Some of your favorite fighters of all time have built their career around taking away a jab. First fighter that comes to mind is Floyd Mayweather. Look, it was one of the things that I said about him for a long time. Okay, here's the thing. When you go into a gym, whether you're 6 years old, 16 years old, 26 years old, from the first day that you walk into a boxing gym, not like a cardio boxing gym or a white collar type gym or anything like that, but like a real, true, legit boxing gym, they're going to tell you the jab is the most important punch in boxing. You need to have a good jab. You need to build your game around the jab. Everybody knows it. Everybody works on it. Everybody does it. Okay? So for a master technician like Floyd, the first thing that he's going to figure out is how to take away a guy's jab. Because if you can take away a guy's jab and his whole game is built around it, that's it. You've already disarmed him. He's not going to know how to control the distance. He's not going to know how to get off the rest of his offense. He's not going to have the right timing and the rhythm. It's like you take away a guy's jab, he's done. That's it. And you can do it multiple ways. You can do it with footwork. You can do it with counterpunching. You can do it by stuffing it. You can get inside of it. I mean, there's more than one way to skin a cat, okay? Floyd did it by counterpunching. He was famous for the pull counter. He did it a few other ways, but basically that's what he did. If you look at his fights, by the third or fourth round, he typically had his opponents not using the jab as frequently. When they did, it was falling short a lot of times. It just wasn't effective as they typically used it, and it completely disarmed him. At that point, he would switch it up a little bit and do a few other things. But look, that's the type of that Devin Haney has the type of jab where if you cannot get by it, you're done. And look, easier said than done. I can look here and I can say, hey, we just need to have good time and you need to come over the top of it. I mean, do you think George Kambosos didn't know that? He came over the top of that jab in like the second round with a right hand. It was actually, I want to say it was like the second round. Now, I'm not saying he won the round, but he landed a couple shots there that made you start to think, okay, first round, relatively inactive, kind of feeling things out, kind of seeing how it's going to go. Nothing really landed. Devin Haney takes the round. But relatively inactive from both guys. Second round comes around. You see things happen a little bit more. George Kambosos comes over the top. I want to say he comes over the top of that jab with a right hand, lands. He also jumps in with a left hook later on in the round, lands that, gets a few shots, makes Devin Haney, move a little bit faster than he wanted to, move out of a spot that he wanted to, not do exactly what he wanted. And I looked at it and I started to think like, okay, is this where he's going to turn it on? Is this where he's going to start to make some moves? Is this where he's going to start to implement his game plan? Not at all. Got completely whitewashed by the jab and a few other, and hit with some good right hands throughout the fight. Devin Haney looked beautiful, circling to the weak side and all kinds of stuff, but just couldn't handle it. But is Gervonta Davis going to be able to handle it? Is Ryan Garcia going to be able to handle it? Is Lomachenko, should he get this fight? Is he going to be able to handle it? Who's going to be able to take away that jab? How are they going to do it? What's going to be Devin Haney's answer if that jab gets taken away? Because look, you can see that he's a man who's built his entire game around it. What if it gets nullified? What if somebody's able to take it away? Is he going to be able to fight with a lead right hand? Is he going to be able to use enough feints and come in with a hook? Is he going to be able to come inside and fight a tough game if he needs to? If somebody wants to come in there and get his head in his chest. Those are all things that we're going to see going forward in the future. We're going to see guys start to devise game plans to attempt to get rid of that jab, make him uncomfortable, fight in spots that he doesn't want to fight in. And look, I'm fascinated to watch it all, right? Like that's what makes the sport great. That's what makes this amazing, is that we get to see how guys are going to answer to all these things, what trainers are going to come up with, and what guys are going to do. So, dude, I'm super excited about it, man. We got a young guy who is just in his prime in Devin Haney, who's coming out there excelling on the biggest stage. I'm super happy that I didn't think his pops was going to be there, right? That was the story forever. Then all of a sudden at the last minute, they approved the visa, so he's able to be there with them. Mark Kriegel was talking to him after the fight. He was like, man, that was huge. It was so big that my father was able to make it, not only for the emotional aspect, the fact that they had been in it together for the win, but I also fully believe that it just offered a level of support and a level of comfort that helped him in that fight. Like point blank, particularly being over in Australia versus being at home and stuff. So like I think it just made a big deal, but at the same time, he was ready to go without it. So that was also a growing moment because mentally the whole time preparing for it, he was ready to go. So I definitely don't think that he would have looked any different. I don't think that he would have suffered at all had his father not been there, but I do think by him not being there for the longest and then at the last minute showing up that it was a growing opportunity, probably going to help him going forward in his career as far as mental toughness is concerned. Not that we saw him slack at all, not that we looked at his mental toughness as a weakness or anything like that, but like every opportunity is an opportunity to grow and learn, and I just think that this was one that probably just helped build him up a little bit, probably helped him make him a little bit better, which again, super excited to see what he's got going forward. He just came out there in such a dominating fashion and won this. Speaking of going forward, big thing that we talked about in the post, and they were talking about in the post fight, up and down, was the rematch. Rematch clause was thrown right in there. They said, are you going to come back here in November, later on in the year, in the same stadium, Marvel Stadium, over in Australia? You're going to give the rematch. Now, I don't know how all these things work as far as the specifics and the up and downs. None of us have seen the contract. I would think if there's a rematch clause in there, the rematch is going to happen. But you didn't hear something so cut and dried from Devin Haney, from him and from his team. What you consistently heard was, if it makes sense, if the networks want it, if the fans want it, if it makes sense, then we'll get this rematch. Which basically they're talking about money. He said, I'm not ducking anybody. I'll get out here, I'll fight whoever, but it has to make sense, which I totally get. I would think that if there's a rematch clause in there, it has to happen, but maybe there's some kind of wiggle room. Maybe they'll give Kambosos step aside money if it doesn't make sense, so that he won't take the rematch, and then he can, Haney can move forward with something else. I got no idea. Doesn't really matter to me. Personally, I think that if they come off for the rematch, there is a slight possibility, or maybe a legit possibility, that Kambosos will look better after going in there and experiencing that jab, getting smashed in the face with it for 12 rounds. He'll figure out exactly what it is he needs to do, work on something in training camp, a way to sidestep it, work angles or something. I'm not really sure. I don't think that he's going to be able to come back in this short period of time and win. It could be completely opposite. We could come back. Devin Haney could look even better. He scores a stoppage by like the 8th round because he's in there and just starts smashing Kambosos with the right hands afterwards. Like, who knows? Either way, he looks so good in this fight. I'm not really interested in seeing the rematch. So, don't sign me up for it. Other than the fact that, of course, I'm gonna watch all the fights anyway. So, but that wouldn't be what my vote is for. I'd much rather see him. I think there's more interesting fights for him at 135 than a rematch with Kambosos at this moment. Now, that being said, that's not to say that a rematch wouldn't make sense in the future. But coming out for dominating loss like that, and then you're going to go ahead and you're going to jump right back into it, like, what's going to make that intriguing? What's going to make that a fight that we all want to see, that we think something's going to be different, that we think that it's going to go out there and, basically just look different? I came into this fight making a prediction that Haney was going to win 8 rounds to 4, 116, 112. Looked way better than that. So let me know what you guys think. What is it that you want to see next for Devin Haney? What is it you think George Kambosos is going to do next? And how did you think each man looked in this one? Was his jab as good as you thought it was? Did you think was it even better than you thought it would be? Let me know what you guys think.